Hello Internet, this is Whispering Whim. Today I'm going to be doing a voiceover of my video. Sort of an unintentional choice, if you will. I had gone through recording and came to find out that I had accidentally recorded the whole video with my microphone turned off. So, that's alright. It gives me a unique chance to explore the voiceover a little bit. Because if I'm not, concentrating on the drawing or making a lot of scribble noises, I can play around with the fact that this is a stereo microphone. And for those of you listening in stereo, I can kind of go back and forth and see if anyone out there likes that. So maybe it'll be a good thing to give my listener, you, more personal attention, because I do tend to focus on the artwork a lot when I'm drawing, and that's the main thing I talk about. I'll miss it a little bit, capturing my reactions to the drawing in person, or live as it were, is definitely different from sort of responding to it while watching it on the side, But that's alright. So anyways, today's theme is Hanna Barbara. I'm currently drawing Yogi Bear. And for those who aren't familiar, or maybe are a little too young, Hanna Barbera was a big part of my childhood, and I would imagine very many other people's childhood as well. The studio is responsible for the Jetsons, Flintstones, Pink Panther, the Smurfs is probably their biggest. They also were the ones that designed Scooby-Doo, and a whole slew of other animations. They were so prominent because they worked on a limited animation style called, some people call it static animation. Basically, they try to get away with using as few frames and as few changes as possible. You'll notice that a good deal of their characters wear like a collar or something around their neck, which I'm drawing in right now. And what that allowed them to do was to save money because they could keep the body in one spot and just animate the head. And your brain wouldn't think that it was that weird because the collar was sort of like a dividing line between the two objects. So I'll admit that during this particular video, I was really annoyed with my own artwork. And you'll see right now I'm extending the muzzle a little bit and changing the shape of the mouth just slightly to sort of accommodate the fact that I sort of made the head a little disproportionate, so I kind of try to fake it. It's funny to try to fix one's line in Sharpie, but I think that's a fun part of the challenge, Noisy neighbors, I apologize. I'd pause and restart later, but I have a feeling they're going to be moving around for a while, so you and I can just deal with that. Alright, so I definitely was getting annoyed at this point in the drawing. My attempts to sort of hide my mistakes weren't going so well. And the problem is once you mess up one, significant aspect, such as in this case, I got the head a little off shape. it's sort of like a domino effect, you know. It's harder to get the body in the right shape, the arms and whatnot, because at least when I draw, I key off of the features that I've already laid down. And so having one thing off sort of leads to other things being off, since the goal is to kind of get it to all line up, right? So I sort of got angry. Looking at it now, it's not that bad, but I was upset, so moving on to the next drawing, so to speak. Next up would be Wilma from the Flintstones. She has a very, very basic sort of design. This was before they stylized themselves as much as they ended up in later animations. Her facial expressions are really simple, since her eyes are just little ovals. Her only really distinctive feature is that hair, and if I recall right, I didn't do a really good job of getting it in there, so it's alright. I do want to apologize for taking so long to make this video for you. Not only have I been working 6-day weeks still, but I got sick. I was really upset to be sick in the middle of August. I don't think I've ever gotten a cold in summer before, but I suspect that, when you work as much as I have been, that your immune system sort of gets a little off kilter and has a harder time sort of adjusting or getting over certain bugs, so it is what it is, right? But the important thing is that I got better, right? And now I'll be able to continue making recordings. So looking at this particular drawing that I'm working on, Wilma from the Flintstones, what I'm noticing, and I'm pretty sure I noticed at the time, was how jerky my pen strokes were. I was very hesitant, Sometimes when I draw, I make those big sweeping lines and, throw caution to the wind. And I definitely prefer to draw that way. But because I hadn't recorded for about 3 weeks, I think that I got sort of nervous. I hadn't been recording, I hadn't been drawing, and I find that I don't forget how to draw, but the mental game, the nerves and the am I good enough kind of problems, sort of, they add up when there's time in between sessions. So I definitely was a bit nervous, and you'll see a little later on in the video that I did a lot of different things to try to shake the nerves out, and it was only moderately effective. Now, out of the Flintstones and the Jetsons, because in my mind they're more or less the same show. It's a family sitcom comedy kind of thing. I definitely preferred the Jetsons over the Flintstones. You know, the novelty factor of having a dinosaur do all your work for you wasn't as inspiring as imagining a future with hover cars and space travel. And I just think that overall that 50s, 1950s-esque kind of vision for our future, even though it's very obviously dated at this point. I think we've covered the fact that a lot of shows set in the future have failed on a lot of marks, but I get nostalgic for that kind of daydreaming, that kind of imagination of what could happen, how our lives can go. And definitely now that I'm a little bit older, I think I really wish I could recapture that in a meaningful way. Because I still have dreams and aspirations. Dreams and aspirations, yes. But they have so much more realistic tendencies. When you're a kid, it's okay to say, I want to grow up to be a fire engine. And the world quickly tries to teach you that people are not fire engines, and therefore you can't. And that's, a practical reality of life, right? But the pure imagination involved in, thinking you could be anything, an astronaut or a president, the fact that we reach a point in life where we discover how unrealistic that is makes me sad. Not in a depressive, can't function kind of sad, just a little mournful for what could have been. So, at any rate, even as a kid, the idea of the future was bright and promising. And, just like the way the Jetsons have become dated. I feel like sometimes our dreams for the future become dated, but, we come up with new dreams. And sometimes they're not so bad. I definitely think my life has gone in a very odd direction, but at the same time I'm not necessarily complaining. There's things to complain about, but I also am doing things that I never imagined I would do. Little 5-year-old me didn't imagine that I'd be sitting here and talking to you right now. But let's go ahead and refocus on the image on our screens, right? Might have noticed that I sort of looked at my phone and decided, you know what? I need to get the nerves out. Scooby-Doo was my next image to draw, because I sort of, I Google most of the images ahead of time so that the flow of the video doesn't get interrupted too much, right? But out of all the cartoons that I had picked for this particular video, Scooby-Doo was going to be one of the most difficult characters, his design has been around long enough that although the basic shapes that make up Scooby-Doo haven't necessarily changed all that much, there's been time for, just tiny bits of stylistic growth in his design, right? And so I was kind of nervous to get on drawing that, since, as you saw, I've already kind of said, oh, my Yogi was bad. Oh, my Wilma was bad. So, it's all a mind game, right? Just kind of got stuck in my own head, and I was like, I can't do that, so I'm trying some little Cthulhu's to try to loosen up. For those who maybe didn't watch my very first test video, and I definitely would not blame you for not watching it, right? I've definitely grown a lot in my videos since then. I have this little chibi version of Cthulhu that now is sort of my go-to doodle when I don't know what else to draw. So I'm drawing him here to sort of try to loosen up, stop focusing on the Hanna Barbara cartoons that I was having trouble drawing, and just have a little bit of fun with it. And those of you that might be familiar with Cthulhu, or rather the ones that are not familiar with him, he's sort of a horror book character. And, they spend a whole story sort of hinting at how unbearable he is, how creepy or insane, insanity-inducing. And it's not till the very end that he sort of gets viewed and you finally get the physical description. But at any rate, he's kind of, he's typically a pretty serious character and drawn with serious intent, so I have fun with my little chibi Cthulhu's, right? So, that's just sort of what I attempted to do, right? To get ready for drawing Scooby-Doo. And it's funny because I was like, all right, now I can do it. Now I'm gonna draw perfectly. And I still ended up hating it, as you'll soon see. And I don't know, I've kind of hated everything I've drawn lately. I had even attempted one video before this one. I was still kind of sick, but I was like, I feel well enough. And I attempted a whole different style, right? Because I was, not in the mood for the same old. And it ended up turning out so very terrible that I think it sort of just triggered that, like, I'm gonna fail sensation, and I'm very, very susceptible to that. It's easy for me to get stuck in my own head. I imagine that most people kind of know what it's like to be stuck in their own head, right? Maybe not about art, but we all have things in our lives, I think, that sort of rely on a certain stability of thought that we don't always get. So, at any rate, with this Scooby-Doo, I think since there's a pretty good, clear picture of my phone, you can see how his head was supposed to be in profile, and it ended up somehow looking more straight on. And so I just sort of stopped mid-head, which, is kind of counterproductive considering most of the time I'm like, hey, Sarah, work with your mistakes. But like I said, I was just so psyched out. I went through 2 or 3 versions of Scooby-Doo because I just couldn't get my nerves to settle. And that's one of the reasons why I decided to do this voiceover for you, actually. Because I didn't want yet another video to go to waste, right? It's been 3 weeks since I've been able to update, and I know I don't have a large fan base, but I know there's at least one of you out there listening, and I figure that if I'm consistent, if I can keep product sort of rolling out, that not only will that give me a chance to really improve and maybe get some feedback, but for the few people who, decided to give me a chance, even though my first videos were, they were pretty terrible, right? The fact that there's a few people who stuck around, means that I wanna be able to keep doing this, and I don't want to let my life difficulties get in the way of that. So, pushing forward, and we'll see. At any rate, you can kind of see that I'm doing a very different type of drawing this time around. Usually I go for clean, concise lines, and I'm utilizing a scribble technique. It's something I picked up in college. I actually went to school for art, right? And one of the big things, if you take a lot of drawing classes, is that they try to help you find different ways of looking and seeing, and sometimes that changes the style of how you're drawing. This particular scribble technique, the whole point of it is that you don't stop moving your pen. You're supposed to just keep making lines, no matter what those lines represent. And the nice thing about that particular technique is that if you're jittery, like I said, I've been nervous, it gives you a physical outlet for those jitters so that you can sort of focus in on something, And when you do that, when you really concentrate on one particular aspect of a thing, you usually get different results. So, while this particular rendition of Scooby-Doo probably is not necessarily any better or worse than the other drawings that I did so far today, or at least in this video, I think it was enough to sort of help me be like, alright, it doesn't have to be perfect, If people only wanted to watch absolutely perfect videos, there are other people out there that they could be watching, right? So I have to take faith in the fact that people listening to me, are listening to me for a reason. And, understand that sometimes just being me is enough. So, it was successful in that regard. Plus, I like how the scribbles look sometimes. I definitely prefer the cleaner drawings. I feel that I can classify those as drawings where, this particular image would be more of a doodle, quote unquote. So, but it has lots of character. Maybe I should consider doing more scribble drawings in the future. You can always let me know in the comments below, right? Let me know what you like to see. At this point, we've only got one more drawing left to go through. So it's a good point to say thank you for listening and for supporting my videos. Thank you for helping me, be inspired to still draw. 'Cause it's so easy, right? To let life get in the way and forget that we have these hobbies or activities that we really love, right? So, feeling a sense of obligation, whether it's, misplaced or not. Like, obviously, I don't really have to do YouTube videos, but that small sense of, I don't want to let you down, means that I continue drawing, or, tasting new foods, or playing fun games. So, it helps keep me well-rounded when I do these. At any rate, our last Hanna Barbara character for the day is Rosie the Robot. I mostly picked this particular character because she's the only one out of the more popular Hanna Barbara cartoon characters that has, an almost angular, it's not angular, geometric sort of feel. Typically Hanna Barbara, it's not, I wouldn't classify it as an organic style. It's not super loose, but they do tend to stay away from any like squares or triangles. In a sense, that old school, 50s, 60s cartoons were not necessarily realistic, but realistic in a different sense from modern day cartoons. So it would make sense that they're not most stylized, but the one that kind of reached out to me from all the Hanna-Barbera cartoons that I could remember was Rosie the Robot, because being a robot, she had to have some sort of, at least cylindrical in this case, but, some sort of mechanical aspect, right? Fun fact, the Jetsons kinda came out twice. I forget what the name, if they changed the name when they did it the second time, but I want to say the first, I think the two series were like a decade apart. Now I can't remember the dates. I actually, I feel so bad. I went on Wikipedia so that I'd have some sort of like fun fact to give. Because sometimes I have a lot of dead air on these things that I end up filling with little bits about my personal life, and I'm trying to slowly get away from that, trying to make the videos maybe a little more entertaining, because a little bit of, knowledge about who you're listening to is good, but this isn't a diary, it's not a vlog. So, yeah, I Wikipedia'd all the different cartoons that I was drawing today. And I read the fact about how Rosie the Robot in the original series only showed up twice, which I thought was interesting. And I was going to remember the dates and everything. Of course, that failed, so what can you do, right? But at any rate, it was one of the things that I kind of mentally took a note of while I was doing my quote-unquote research, right? Was just how long Hanna Barbera were producing cartoons. The studio was obviously named for two dudes who, Hanna and Barbera, was their last names. But that studio went on to produce, to make stuff for, goodness, 50 or so years. Which actually surprised me, Some of the cartoons they are credited for making, I didn't really, I'm sure I knew at some point that they were Hanna Barbera, maybe, but, I hadn't realized how much that name had an impact on my childhood until I started looking up things for this video. Had I known that Smurfs were an appropriate character for the theme, I probably would have done one of them in this series of drawings, but I didn't learn that until after the fact. I definitely liked to watch Smurfs when I was younger. It's sort of an odd little universe now, but everyone makes plenty of jokes about how Lady Smurf is sort of the only girl, so she must be getting a lot of action kind of thing. But odd implications aside, it was an amusing show for me. And maybe not necessarily my all-time favorite, but I could definitely see myself, going back and rewatching it for nostalgia's sake. So, yeah, I would have liked to draw one of the characters, but, it's certainly an option to do an Hanna Barbera video part 2. One where you can actually hear the marker go across the page. Although, I was listening to some of these last night, as I went to bed, and it still surprises me how different sounds depending on the circumstance and the environment. Because obviously I try to listen to these as I'm editing and, make sure I don't find anything too auditory offensive, audibly offensive, maybe? I don't know what word I'm trying to look for. But try to take away the worst of the noises. I can't avoid all the background noise, but I try to take it away, and then so it sounds fine, right? And if I listen to a video as I'm going to sleep, I'm like, wow, those little, like just the pen going across the paper is a lot louder than I remember. So I am curious, I'm really hoping that someone can kind of let me know, if that's too much, the Sharpie noise, or, when I do the Munch Pack video, if the crinkling of the bag is just too loud. I don't entirely know how I would fix that, so to speak, because I'm recording everything at the same time typically, and for some reason, I don't know why, but my voice just doesn't stand out during a recording, pretty much any other noise, the fan from my laptop, the gurgling noise that the AC unit makes, clicking, of a computer mouse the next room over. I can hear all of those just fine, and in fact, more so than my voice. So, I guess I could start importing the sound into, an editing software separate from the movie software, which would give me a chance to maybe find a way to not drown out, but to bring my voice forward. But if that's not as important as I think it is, then I'm not really going to spend the time on that, because it's only gonna slow down how much recording I can do. So a lot of interesting questions. I've gotten some of the basic things done I needed to improve my videos, but I feel like I've only hit the tip of the iceberg, so to speak. At any rate, I'm going to wish you a good night, and I want to say thank you again for listening. Please, please, please leave a comment below, and I'll catch you next time.